Here we are again. Welcome to Flashworks. Today we're going to do a multifamily dwelling. So first we click on dwelling unit, then we go to dwelling selection. We've already done the dwelling unit, so we're going to go to a multifamily building. We click on the multifamily building, and what we're going to do is we have already put a file in for an apartment. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that we're going to do this apartment twice. So in unit number 1, we're going to say that we have 5 units of this type, and what we'll do is click on the unit file name. So we click on unit file name. It takes us back to our apartment calculations. You see we have a sample number 1. We click on that, open, and it goes in the unit file names. Now this building we're going to say is a 10 unit building, so we'll add unit number 2. If you had previously calculated these examples, you would have apartment A and apartment B. We're just using the sample for this procedure. Secondly, we're going to enter the voltage and phase of the service, which is 240 volts. We'll use a single phase service. And house panels in the building, we're going to say that there's 1, and that house panel is in the house panel file, so we'll click on that file to open the house panel that was previously calculated. And you'll see we have sample house panel. We'll click on that and notice it's entered. And now we look at all data entered below. So we've chosen the units, that's checked off. We've chosen the house panel, checked off. We've entered the voltage and phase for the service data. Now we're going to proceed to go to File, and we're going to calculate this multifamily. And it's going to give us a little warning. It's going to say that voltage and phase, we always get this little warning just to check and make sure that we're correct on that. We say OK, and boom, it's calculated. And notice we calculate both the standard and the optional method all at the same time. Your total load for the standard line load is 264,505 volt amps. Your neutral is 131,711 volt amps. Optional, now this takes the optional deductions for heating and cooling and all the optional deductions from Article 220. And notice that the load down there is 189,173. Neutral's the same. And then we pick a panel. So the standard line load for the main service would be 1102 amps, 444 for the neutral. The optional is 788. Alright, so then we're going to say OK, and we go back to File, and then we go to panel size. Again, you get a couple of warnings. We'll check those warnings off just to make sure that that comes up later on. Notice that our service voltage and phase has been carried over. The standard calculation is up there, the actual load, and the optional load. So it would pick a panel size of 1200 amps for the standard method, and the optional would be 800. So we normally select the optional method because not all the loads in this multifamily are on at the same time. So you'd pick an 800 amp panel, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say that it's we're going to use THHN or THWN wire, and the first thing we'll calculate is the main service, and we'll look at the neutral load just for a check. Then we're going to be asked some questions here. So you say determine conductors and conduit, and the first question is the neutral current carrying? Well, actually it's less than half the load. You'll notice that, less than half the load. So The only reason why neutral conductor would be current carrying is if you have harmonic loads, a lot of fluorescent lighting loads, and so on. So you make your choice here. We're just going to go ahead and say yes. And it says, should it be made full size? Yes. And you get a note and it says parallel conductors are needed. Why is that? Well, there's no single conductor that would work for 800 amps because you have two of them. So go ahead and do parallel conductors, say OK. And the same thing for parallel conductors for aluminum, say OK. And you notice parallel is in the box. So what you have to do with that is, you've only got one panel, so parallel conductors for your wire size, you click on number 1 and the paralleling screen appears and it says panel number 1, 800 amps. How many parallel sets do you want to use to parallel this? Well, initially let's just choose 2 sets of parallel conductors. Now you're going to get asked the same questions you were asked before about the neutral. So push the determine conductor conduit button. He says, is a neutral full size? Yes. Should it be made full size? You say yes. And one more time for aluminum. Needed size of aluminum wire is not available. Because it says a 900. You say okay. So what you need for copper is 2 sets of 600 kcml copper, and it goes in a 3-inch conduit. Then it says 2 sets of 900 kcml. Where it says it's not available is if you were to put these all in one conduit. That's where that warning was for the aluminum. You can't size the aluminum, put them all in one conduit. So we might want to go back and just try 3 parallel sets and see if that'll come up for us. So we change the numbers from 2 to 3. Again, push the buttons. Neutral conductor current carrying, yes. Made full size, yes. Full size. And now if you look at your loads, you'll see that you'll have 3 sets in separate conduits. So each separate conduit would be 300 kcml and 300 kcml in copper, and it's a 2.5-inch conduit. Aluminum would be 400 kcml, and that's going to be a 2.5-inch conduit. You could put this all in one conduit. It'd be 6 sets of 600 in a 5-inch conduit, not readily available. And aluminum to be 6 750s in a 6-inch conduit. So we don't save this, but you can print it out. As you can see, we made that quick change by just changing the number. We save OK. We're done. So we want to get back out, and notice you have an instruction box that tells you just what I've told you on how to do this. You say OK, and you go back to this screen. And you can do the short circuit calculations here. We're going to do that in a separate operation. So you can either print it and you say OK, you go back to File, and then you go back to Save As, and here you would name the file name of this project and save it. We're not going to save it at this point in time because we have other samples here. If you were doing an actual calculation, you'd save it as the Creek apartment building. And notice that on multifamily buildings, the extension is .bbb. So BBB is here, and they would be stored in the house panel portion of the program. So we're done. We're going to cancel, and we're finished. It's going to give me a file error because I did not save it. And I'm going to exit. Back to the dwellings. Now you're going to return and do your next type of calculation.